I mean, we lost my sister to suicide. So it's like a really
Oh,
severe tragedy that I still live with today in my family. Like, and it made me realize that if I want to do medicine, like I really have to impact people authentically, not just like, here, try this drug and see you in a month. And I felt like it was a personal responsibility for me, for my sister, to do something way more deeper.
but then the second thing you do is you get the objective data. So you're like, is their vitamin D low? Or maybe they're not making the neurotransmitters. So you're going to look at some of the toxic burden. Do they have too much sugar? I can tell you, if you want to be depressed, go without sleep and eat a lot of sugar. You'll be depressed really quick. And oh, wait, that's most of America.
People meditating, doing yoga, just going for a walk every day for like a half an hour, getting fresh air, oxygen, like breathing, sleeping. It's always the basics that work, that people want something more complex, but the basics are what fundamentally fix us, like eating more plant-based foods, and cutting out dairy, cutting out sugar.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's Reagan Archibald, and today I'm so excited to have my friend, Dr. Gowri Rocco, on the show. Gowri is not only is she a phenomenal human being, someone that will just light you up. She brings a lot of energy and light into every room she's in. She and I met each other through Dan Sullivan at Strategic Coach. Thanks, Dan. And she's double board certified in family medicine, in regenerative and anti-aging and functional medicine. And she's got a really cool title that her patients call her, which is the Wellness Warrior. She's been practicing for over 20 years. And she and her husband, they went to medical school together. They practiced together. They literally had a nursery. So for those of you who are watching our YouTube video, you'll see the remnants of a nursery when Gowri and her husband were raising their kids and starting the practice. So Gowri, it's so good to have you on the show.
Oh, it's great to be on. Thank you, Reagan. It's a pleasure. And I'm so excited because I feel like we do kind of similar things. So it's kind of nice that we can advocate for our people, to learn more. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? I just hosted a Go Wellness event. So I had a group of doctors that came to Utah, and a lot of them were virtual as well. And the big thing that we looked at, we said, man, healthcare is a $4.3 trillion industry. And imagine if we actually could compete against that industry with the medicine you and I practice. Can you imagine if we had that size of a market share, how much of a difference it would make in the American health? I mean, mind blowing, right?
Mind blowing. Yeah. I think, big pharma is reaching for even our little piece of the pie. You know what I mean? So it's scary. So we got to keep reaching into theirs, and just, I think like we just teaching people and motivating them that, there's so many side effects to certain things. And I think like the way we can help people to be more aware of it and make our pie grow bigger by teaching people is probably our people, when they feel better, we're succeeding. Right.
Yeah,
and when the typical medicine people, which is more reactive and we're proactive, when people don't feel good and they have side effects and take another drug to get rid of this side effect and they just feel like a number, that's when like we're not succeeding. So if we don't have those kind of patients, or our people feel good and they're happy to see us, we're doing the right thing. And I think like we can keep growing.
Yeah. And I love that. I love seeing labs before and after. I love seeing people, just transformations. I mean, there's nothing better in my mind. Like my next door neighbor, we worked together, and it was so cool because I haven't seen her in like a month. And I'm like, holy cow, you look great. She's like, I feel so good. And she's in her 70s, and she's like, giving me a big hug. She's like, I'm sleeping better. My energy's better. My husband likes me again. I mean, it's cool when you can change people's lives. And even if, your next door neighbor is someone who lives halfway across the globe, Those are really important things. So you went to conventional medical school. You had by every reason you should just be practicing medicine like any other MD. What was the shift that got you thinking outside of the conventional medical box?
That's a good question again. Like I'm from India. I was born in India. My parents came to this country and I was 7. And it's really interesting because when you come here, you just think like, English was my third language. So I was just assimilating, but I had a lot of my own culture with me still. So my parents, we eat lots of vegetables. We constantly move. My parents could barely afford a car when we came here. So we were like walking everywhere to the park and everything. So I think when I grew up, and my dad's like, he's a physician too. So when I was growing up, like, I was like, why are people so like unhappy, like to eat good food or to like walk or bike and everything? So it kind of stuck with me, those roots. And then after graduating from med school, like I realized like the way we get paid is to give everyone a disease. Right? Like the way you get paid by the like insurance companies, you have to give them a disease, a title, which no one's proud to be diabetic, right? And then you have to give them a drug. So I was like, what the hell? Like, this is all backwards. Like, I thought we were going to teach them, like, sit down, let's have a talk, like, eat like this, like, you gotta do this and this. So, sleep more, be happy, pray. Like, those are the things that we were taught. And so probably the same thing that happened to you. It was a big shift for me. And the hardest thing is that I have a sister, and my sister was, she had a very complicated medical condition. And the only thing that was thrown at her was conventional drugs and medications. Mm-hmm. And so it was really hard because I felt like medicine was 3-dimensional. I thought it was like, there was so much more to it, but I realized that, that I had to like learn a lot more if I wanted to on my own, like nutrition, like emotional, IQ, or like learning to deal with like toxins people are exposed to, or even trauma is so huge, and it delays people's psychological growth. And there's, obesity to me is trauma. Like, if, there's so many things that are deep about us. And I feel like we're not taught that in med school. So my sister had like, when she had a condition that it's still hard for me to talk about, but she, when she took her medicine, she would scrape, but she had a lot of side effects. And Reagan, I realized like, oh my God, like no one looked at her nutrition. No one looked at her supplementation. No one talked to her and said, did something happen to you that triggered you to have a bipolar schizophrenic attack, at 18 years old? And so it really shook me up. Like when I graduated from med school, she suffered for 10 years with this condition, and nothing was really changing her life except she was getting bigger and having more side effects. And we just knew like to be on like standby if she needed us. It didn't really, like, she never graduated to a level where she was solely independent of a medication. Like, she'd have to survive taking a series of drugs all the time. And she did not like that. She did not like feeling like she was controlled by medications, constant side effects. And sadly, like, when 9/11 happened, like it affected her really negatively and deeply, like really deeply. Like it pushed her toward even a deeper depression. And unfortunately, we lost my sister, and it shook me up and made me really reevaluate. Like, we lost my sister to suicide. So it's like a really severe tragedy that I still live with today in my family, like, and it made me realize that if I want to do medicine, like, I really have to impact people authentically, not just like, here, try this drug and see you in a month. And I felt like it was a personal responsibility for me, for my sister, to do something way more deeper, like looking in and listening to people, listening to what they have missing in their life that's causing a dysfunction, which holes exist. It's a lot of times it's no one ever asks, like, how do you feel? Like, what's your mental health like? Not just like, does your heart hurt? Do you short of breath? What how do you feel? Like, do you want to be alive? Like, do you have the vitality to be alive? Do you want to exist? So these things matter to me. And because of the gravity of what happened, like, I really use that every day when I practice medicine. So I don't think I'm a conventionalist at all. If anything, I'll do anything but treat conventionally. I look for so many things, like nutrition, as you probably do too, is like critical for me, and traumas. And so I use that with my kids. I use that with my relationships, people I value. And I think what they tell me, I really listen to what they want from me, not what I want from them, like fix their heart condition, fix their blood pressure, fix their cholesterol, like the usual things that I'm trained to do. I want to fix that too secretly, but I try to fix what they want from me first, like fill in their holes first,
And that's and I'm so sorry to hear about your sister. I mean, talk about tragic. And
Thank you.
And I think so much of that, those experiences that we have, if you look at what you did, some people would go deeper into like psychiatry and just, go the drug route. What you did is said, hey, there's something that wasn't acknowledged in your sister. Yeah. That if there was a physician that took the time to actually ask her the question, like, what's the trauma? What are you holding on to? And unpack it a little more, maybe she'd still be here. But what you've done in place of that is you've saved thousands of people's lives. And so how do you look at, if someone wants to approach their emotional well-being, what are some of the ways that you do that? I mean, obviously asking the right questions about, what it's like to be them. How do they feel? Do they, do they want to live? I think that's a really powerful question. But what are some of the ways that you kind of help people unpack some of those past traumas?
I think that's one thing that makes me different too from my colleagues. And what we do is that, I spend an hour with my patient, like the initial visit, probably 90 minutes, depending on what it is. You don't have 7 minutes to say, hey, tell me why you're hurting. Tell me 7 minutes. Like, instead of, have you ever been violated? Like, have you ever, been left alone and, you're scared you're going to die? Like, so I think first step is to like have enough time to really be there and present and listen. So for me, I usually start off with, I do ask about a history of like being violated or traumatized anyway, but I also do a complete blood work panel. Like I cover everything just because I want to see if there's any deficiencies. For instance, looking back, no one ever checked my sister's vitamin D levels. Like, right, vitamin D3 is critical for mental health, so simple things, even like nutrition, when there's certain nutraceuticals that are missing or someone's grossly anemic, they're going to be a lot more depressed, especially women with periods. And hormones, the hormones are so important in women developing, because if they have PCOS or if they have like bad periods, you have to check their hormones to make sure they're not having like, especially nowadays, a lot of women are put on birth control right away, like when they're teenagers. So that's a precursor to depression itself and other bipolar conditions and such, anxiety. So you have to look at like what medications are they taking, like what vitamins are they taking, or are they lack of? And then another thing is checking the hormones levels, like what are the hormone levels for their age? And sometimes if they're depressed, you'll see that estrogen is super low in women. Wow. And they're birth control, so they don't even have a drop of estrogen, and they're 18, right? So you have to look at that. And then for men, testosterone is an antidepressant. It's a natural antioxidant, and men need testosterone, especially free testosterone, to feel vibrant, to feel, to have their sex drive, libido, focus, creativity. And us women, so people always ask, what defines woman? Well, it's estrogen. If we don't have estrogen, we don't feel vitality to live. You don't have like that, when you jump on, like, for instance, when you jump on a trampoline, that's like a woman on estrogen. You're going to bounce back and you're going to learn to forgive and you're going to move on and you're going to be like, what, that's an isolated situation. Let me go on. Okay, I'm going to put that in perspective and go on to the next thing. So when we don't have estrogen, what happens is women are stuck. They're in quicksand. They can't let that thought go. And they constantly like obsess on things. And instead of saying, what, that's an isolated situation, let me move on, you lose that rationality. So estrogen for women is just as strong of an antioxidant for the brain to nurture their well-being, to help them not reduce anxiety, to help them have confidence. So yeah, all those things do matter. I know it sounds like a lot to answer your question, but those are the things you want to look at. And I do a toxicology, like I look at toxins, like such as like, high sugar in the blood is a toxin for me, because it causes insulin resistance. It causes a lot of people to get depressed. It's an acidotic condition that our body lives in. So they don't have enough oxygen. Oxygen can heal that movement, exercise. So do people move? Is this person moving? And how do they cope with their daily stressors? What are their coping mechanisms? Is it alcohol? Is it smoking pot? Is it going for a run? Or is it journaling? Is it prayer? So there's so many things, and it takes so much time to decipher, because nowadays people are taught to cope by looking at other people's lives. They're constantly examining, judging, right? So they're just flipping. And instead of
Instagram, right, TikTok, yep.
Right. And in constant comparison. So there's negativity, there's pessimism, there's, and it all is, it's a feeling of loneliness, even if they're a part of a big family, even if they're married, they could be part of a community, church, but they feel lonely because they're not communicating or having humanistic habits, connections. So there's so much now. It's so complex. And then so we have to spend time with people to listen and understand, and to find out where those missing links are in functional medicine that we could fill to help them feel a little bit better every day.
Man, I love that. And what's the quote? Comparison is the thief of joy. Can't remember who said it, but yeah, I think that's where a lot of the isolation comes from, and loneliness. And you said just to unpack what you said, it was very, it's impressive, because on you, it's like, yes, you want to listen, so you have a very open heart. And I think those of you who have the fortunate experience to work with Dr. Gowri, you'll find that she's just very warm and very inviting, which is not always what you get when you go to a medical doctor. It's usually like, let's get down to business, and here's your 7 minutes, like you mentioned. But you do it by opening up not only your ears and your heart, and listening, which is just to have somebody listen to you these days is so rare. We're all so distracted. But then the second thing you do is you get the objective data. So you're like, is their vitamin D low? Or maybe there's they're not making the neurotransmitters. So you're going to look at some of the toxic burden. Do they have too much sugar? I can tell you, if you want to be depressed, go without sleep and eat a lot of sugar. You'll be depressed really quick. And oh, wait, that's most of America.
Dementia. I know. And people complain, they act like energy comes in a drink or a beverage or a pill. It doesn't. It comes with, energy is recycled. It's not created. So you have to recycle. You got to burn a fat cell, or you got to meditate. You got to do something to get that, it's earned energy. We earn energy. And if you want positive energy, you have to habitually think positive, because it's a contagion. Negative thinking is a contagion. Positive energy is a contagion. And, luckily we're in coach where we can have a positive, we pay to be in that environment where we can meet people with that kind of attitude. But generally, you're around pessimistic people, you're around negative people, complaining, and judging. So I always tell people, you know what? Judge yourself. Look at yourself and ask in your relationship, why am I not happy? What am I doing? Why are we constantly looking and judging at other people? So generally, for our health, it's the exact same thing. We earn our health. So if we're eating too much sugar and we're not sleeping, you're right. We're going to be tired, exhausted, and grumpy, and getting fat, and just we're going to lose hair. Everything that you don't want to be, but people don't want to make those sacrifices.
So what's the most challenging patient group that you work with right now?
If you want me to answer honestly, it's got to be the long haul COVID patient, and definitely the vaccinated. I don't know if it's okay to talk about this, but
oh yeah, please, yeah.
Okay, so I have been one of those doctors that have been treating the whole time COVID, what I've been trained, what I find logical, what I feel like would help save someone's life. So I think the vaccination part right now is a challenging, there's been a lot of residual post-vaccination injuries, and just to teach people that our immune system is is we are so blessed to have the most amazing immune system. So whether people got vaxxed or not, I understand, because we had to travel, people had to keep their jobs. But how do we learn from this, and how do we improve so we don't make these same mistakes again? Because there's been a lot of cardiac damage, there's been a lot of neurological damage, there's been a lot of like depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide. We've never had such high levels of action actually driving out suicide levels. Women bleeding, having irregular periods. So there's a consequence. And I'm not saying everybody has this consequence, but there's a large enough consequence that we have to try to help people kind of recover from this, buffer these effects. And so, yeah, like I don't want people to, things happen, but moving forward, like how do we become healthier? And I feel like, I don't know if you feel like this, Reagan, like I feel like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we were on the verge of everybody loving functional medicine, regenerative medicine. Everybody was on board with us. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and everyone forgot all the common sense. It's just like, oh my gosh, like, let me just sit at home, not move, not go outside and go for a jog or go on the beach. It's like common sense, like with the mask, like everything just was like wiped out because of fear. And now we have to do that damage control and reteach people like those things again. Like we're starting from scratch again. Like, do you feel that? Like,
I think we have societal PTSD from it because it was, as Dan says, it was more of a lockdown than it was a pandemic. And so now our nervous systems are so triggered and just waiting for the next shoe to drop. And so I saw so much innovation come out of it. And we've seen all the science, and there's all these new cool peptides, and cell therapy is blowing up. But on the other side of the equation, the other 80% is society just went into complete fear mode. And you're in the thick of it there in California too. So
it's so bad. Yes. It's very outrageous, because here I was like, okay, there's a reason why like being in the sun, like it's the most critical thing, like vitamin D. We don't have a homeless problem here. It's bigger than ever, because the people that were inside trapped that didn't come out are the ones that got hurt, not the ones living outside. I'm just like, this is common sense.
Seeing a correlation? Yeah. And then people getting arrested on the beach. I mean,
I know.
And with the long COVID, because there's a lot of people who've been injured, and there's nothing to fall back. There's no one to hold accountable. It's like, hey, you deployed a treatment that was not only was it not effective, is what we're learning. I guess what the CDC just released is that the vaccinated people, there's 1 in 1 million fewer deaths if you're vaccinated. And I'm like, why do you even report that? That's almost embarrassing that they're trying to have, show any kind of efficacy. But then we have the spike proteins. Now we're learning there is a shedding of the spike proteins. So even if you haven't been vaccinated, you're still being influenced and impacted by it. But what are some of the treatments that you found to be effective?
Well, I love peptides, so I know like you utilize them too. So thank God we have these great tools for our patients. And I'm really huge on like nattokinase, curcumin, vitamin D, quercetin. So I've been using those anyway before, because some of my patients have to come in and they have a history of methylating, so they can't break down blood clots. Anyway, so I've been using some of these things, but now more than ever, like I think like we're seeing how beneficial those are. But more importantly, like we talked about sugar, like cutting down on sugar and teaching people to love vegetables. Like wherever there's a vegetable, you're not going to see cancer growth. You're not going to see fungal growth. You're not going to see parasitic growth. And so just relearning how to eat again, and cooking and not ordering food, constantly ordering food. And people who are, blessed enough to have chefs, okay, that's great. You have your meal cooked for you, but ordinary families do not cook. And so revisiting that, teaching people how to cook again and eating real whole foods again, and so that one makes a difference. Like exercise is paramount. I think like people meditating, doing yoga, just going for a walk every day for like a half an hour, getting fresh air, oxygen, like breathing, sleeping. It's always the basics that work. That people want something more complex, but the basics are what fundamentally fix us, like eating more plant-based foods, and cutting out dairy, cutting out sugar. I think like in my practice, I've been lucky enough to I use a lot of NAC, Reagan. I'm sure you probably do too. I love NAC. So that's made a profound difference in my patients. But I think our God gave us amazing bodies and regenerative properties. Like if you do those things, we're good. Like we have an immune system and we got our antibodies. Like bring it on. That's what I tell people. Like, we had the flu vaccine 80 freaking years. I remember when I was in med school, they're like, oh, you have to get the flu vaccine. I'm like, no, I can't because this and this. But the flu's still here.
Right. Yeah. It's not going
So
away.
what does that mean? It doesn't. So same thing with the COVID. They're going to push this booster thing just to whoever vulnerable take it, And
Yep.
the thing is, we have antibodies that are incredible, that have memory cells that they could go to any variant of this COVID and fix it for us. So if you have obesity is probably the biggest problem with COVID patients, lack of vitamin D, lack of movement. So I think what I've worked on is we're blessed. Our patients aren't the ones, they want to transform. They come in here eager to transform. So I don't like working with people that don't want to be here. I'm like, you know what? You need to find someone else because you're not ready. If you're not ready, come back next year, but it's not our patients that we have to worry about, our clients. It's people outside of here. So 75% to 78% of this country is obese. Morbidly obese, like clinically obese, and insulin resistant, high blood pressure. And those are the people we have to reach out to. And
did you say 78%?
Yes.
And I just, at my Go Wellness event, we had Dr. Wool, who's, he actually worked with Fauci way back in the 80s, and he left the conventional drug manufacturing and went into ketones. And he actually said that the average American consumes 300 pounds of sugar a year.
Wow.
I was like, it's just crazy. So where would you say, a lot of this comes with misinformation. We are misinformed. We've been misinformed on fats. We've been misinformed on.
Right. Oh, fats. It's the best for us. And they keep doing low fat, everything. But that's biggest pet peeve actually is sugar will kill us, not fat.
Sure.
We need good fats. Our brain is fat. Our body is fat. We need fats to make hormones. It's a backbone of every hormone. Vitamin D is actually a fat. It's not a vitamin. It's actually constructed from a fat. So to me, fat is the biggest misrepresentation. And women want to get fillers all the time. They want to get like surgery. And if you eat good fats, you're going to get fat on your face too. So it's like I try to encourage people. Our brain is fat. So eating good fats is the most valuable thing you could do is eat nuts and avocados. I'm sure you preach that to your people, but I feel like people just they think about fats instead of sugars. And I tell people, cut down on the sugars and eat the fats. There's been a lot of research that's finally surfacing that's showing that patients that are dying from cancers have low fats. And there's certain researchers that have really brought this to the forefront, like Dr. Gooden now. I love brilliant PhDs because they're doing all the research and they're teaching it to us, right? So we can practice it into our patients. So to me, it's unbelievable that the research on fat has been so misrepresented by the FDA and all these, I can't go there because I feel like, I don't want to look like I'm against a lot of this conventionalism because they've taught our diabetics how to eat improperly. They've taught our cardiac patients how to eat improperly. And instead of teaching them to eat more fats and healthier, complex proteins, they're teaching them to focus on milk and dairy and sugars.
Processed foods. Yeah, it's criminal. And if you look at the biggest myths in healthcare from what people have bought into more than anything, what would you say it is?
Gosh, I'd love to answer that in multiple ways. I'm not a big fan of the HPV vaccine. Some of these vaccines that they keep coming out with for the children are just overwhelming. I just really, I encourage everyone to research and see what studies they have. They don't have any studies showing that they work. These HPV vaccines, they're giving it to boys, they're giving it to girls, teenagers, left and right. And I think the biggest thing is prevention. We are trying to, instead of teach people common sense, like ways to eat, how to live properly, prevent cancer, we're teaching them, we're letting people just do whatever they want and then trying to fix it with a Band-Aid. That's not how it works. So, survival of the fittest is we can never forget what survival of the fittest is. It means that adaptability, right? We need to learn to teach our children to adapt. we need to be more adaptive. So yes, this COVID happened. Now we need to adapt. We need to learn to re-eat healthy. And if you're already eating healthy, great, then exercise it more. We all can improve in different ways, whether it's with sleep, nutrition, supplementation, or even teaching our children or people that we love, affecting their education. So I think there's so much misinformation about like a quick fix, like vaccines. Like there's no such thing, to me. And then another thing is quick fix with drugs, pharmaceuticals. That's not the answer. Yes, it's great to give someone a prescription of high blood pressure medicine until they learn to lose weight and they eat better and they could take ketones or electrolytes to lower their blood pressure. So there's many ways to utilize these tools. I'm all for medications and I like using the tools to graduate from that medication because someone made the lifestyle changes to get off of it. And some patients can never so some patients have cardiac risk factors. They're going to have to be on a little baby Crestor or Lipitor their whole life, but at least it's a little tiny dose. Instead of like a high dose and you take CoQ10 with it, which offsets a lot of the side effects. But we got to use all of our tools to help people. There's no quick, easy answer. And if you have a quick, easy answer, it's not going to last long. So to me, I try to teach people to be adaptive and to be very, like, even when we go to, our kids go to college, like we have 2 kids in college, right? Like you have a kid and I've got a kid. So we got to teach them like how you eat affects your metabolism because you're going to be studying all day. So you got to go out there and burn it, So the things that we teach them, they're going to learn, but, adapting to their new conditions, adapting to the changes that are happening in our world teaches them to survive better and to be more confident, teaching them how to adapt well.
Man, well, and it sounds like if you were the Minister of Health, if we had someone who could just kind of put new foundational systems in place for medicine and healthcare, it seems like to me there'd be interventions there because there is always going to be need for medical intervention. And I love that part of medicine, the heroic side, the emergency medicine.
Right.
I mean, I'd much rather have a person on lisinopril than to have a stroke. I mean, it's
exactly.
Don't be, like this is where people sometimes write the whole thing up, but it sounds like you would have people focus deeper in on their spirituality. I've heard you mention that a few times, their mindset, but also their nutrition, exercise. Is there anything else that you would do as if I had the authority and I said, all right, Dr. Rocco, you're going to run healthcare in the United States. What are like 2 or 3 things that you would do or initiatives that you would put into place?
Reagan, I'm a big proponent of bioidentical hormones. So I love plant-based medicine. I write prescriptions, but the history of medicine is they were all botanicals. Hippocrates said, let thy food might be my medicine be thy food. So they used to be botanicals until recently, talk about, 50, 60 years ago when everything started becoming more pharmaceutical. But I still love, I treat with medications, especially for acute illnesses. But for sure, I think that the most important thing is to make sure that people are optimized with their hormones. So that being their thyroid, right? So we can help make such a big difference with depression and weight gain and energy there to make sure people are balanced with hormones, thyroid, and definitely estrogen, plant-based estrogen for women and plant-based testosterone for men. Because you see, we start losing our hormones around 35, 38, depending on our stressors. Some people lose it earlier. And so now we're living up to, like, women live up to 81, men are living up to their 76s. So if we're living that long and we're losing our hormones midway through life, like, you can't live half your life without supplementing them. So in a lot of countries, like in Europe, these are over the counter and they're plant-based. And so we have access to that. But sadly, the reason why it's not is because you can't patent a vegetable. And you can't make a ton of money on it with big pharma, which is okay, but it's not like we have to teach physicians and teach naturopaths and teach every service healer, every person that wants to heal that how to spread the word about bioidentical hormones, because it lowers the risk of heart disease by 40 to 50%, estrogen for women, testosterone for men. It prevents Alzheimer's disease we've shown that if it's got to be topical and it's got to be plant-based. So it keeps the brain very cognitively neuroplastic and very creative, and it helps you sleep and deep sleep. It increases your immune system. So, and actually plant-based estrogen for women lowers risks of osteoporosis and even, obesity, where the synthetic hormones that we've introduced to just women as teenagers, that causes hair shedding, it causes like weight gain, it causes depression. It has a link to breast cancer
issues.
Yeah, high blood pressure, cardiovascular. So, why not go back to plant-based and teach people that the risks are significantly less? Unfortunately, it's more expensive because you have to pay out of pocket. But we should go back to the good old Reaganomic years where people paid cash for their doctor, people paid cash for services and not have a middleman. So where people can get what they want and it's a lot more affordable. But I think if I had to implement one thing, it'd be for the sake of keeping our bodies optimized so we age better because what good is having a healthy body if you don't have a healthy brain where you think properly and you have memory and you can't recall your history and your loved ones. And it's the same token, you have a healthy brain, but you don't have a heart that works, you're paralyzed, or you don't have you're insulin resistant and you had to amputate. I mean, you have to have both faculties along with your spirituality. So to me, I think like bioidentical hormones are grossly underused for men and women. Mm-hmm. And especially in the fertility, I help a lot of people get pregnant naturally. And it's amazing how you don't have to do such aggressive intervention. And you teaching people these basic things again about exercise and prayer. Oh my God, God is there for us. And people are just forgetting all the time. All you have to do is communicate and ask, and pray for your patients and pray for people you love. And it all comes back. People aren't using all the tools that we have. And we're very rich in these tools, abundant.
Man, I love that because I think there is so much misinformation from the Women's Health Initiative. That was one of the worst study designs at the onset, and then they stopped it, prematurely. But it was actually really important that they stopped it. That if anyone goes back and looks at it, it's synthetic estrogen that they're using, and they're using, almost 4 or 5 times the prescribed amount that anyone would use. So yeah, there is some very heavy challenges that we have in our country because when people do the science that have special interests, and that's unfortunately what happens when money gets involved in medicine. Then you have to be really smart in wading through the research, and that's what you've done in your career. And that's why you're so passionate about helping people understand that their body can heal. And I love that energy that you exude. So if you had one book that you would recommend that everybody reads, I mean, besides yours, tell us.
Gosh, I love books. If it had to be a non-medical book, it'd be like Fountainhead. That really impacted me.
Ayn Rand.
Right, Ayn Rand, because it just teaches you to be authentic and stand on your own. It's okay if the world doesn't see things your way. It's just a great book by Ayn Rand. I love that. That really impacted me. But if I had to pick a medical book, wow, I love Suzanne Summers, Ageless, just because cool. I was really young coming out of med school and she impacted me because I was like, how come women don't have options other than birth control? Everything you complain about, you headache, or you don't want to get pregnant, or you have issues with anything. They're like, here, take a birth control. And that's all we're taught to tell every single woman. Oh, I got a period, I got a cramp, take birth control. So I'm like, I read her book and I ended up going into, regenerative medicine, anti-aging medicine because of her, because I was like, wow, cool. She is not a ditz. She is a brilliant woman that interviewed a ton of doctors. And it really encouraged me to they need more women in this field. We need women helping women. And the funny thing is I did a women's health fellowship, which was a really renowned, amazing fellowship at Rutgers. I was taught by a man, right? It's hilarious. So I'm gonna teach women. I want to help educate women, and it's because I'm a mother. It's because I have a great, amazing mom. It's because I love my colleagues. I love my girlfriends. I love my friends that are women, and I feel not enough of us help each other, to just thrive and to feel good and I mean, it's not easy being a woman, especially if you're a mother and you work. I mean, it's really much more challenging. So
Yeah.
I feel like that her book in the beginning years really impacted me because it was just really beautiful what she said, that you could be sexy and beautiful and grow older and you're still ageless. To me, that was a very profound statement, and the book itself. And then I'm trying to think, a lot of my professors have written amazing books, like every single one of my professors. I'm sure you could say the same. Like we've been, I love the brain drain. He was one of my professors, Dr. Perlmutter too.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, that impacted me so
Great.
much because,
Wow.
yeah, because I don't have an issue with lactose, or with lactose I do, but not with gluten. So not all of us have gluten sensitivities. Sure. But I realized after reading that book, wow, what a danger to our brain. Like I really threw myself into that, and the gut health, is just everything we do probably for our people has to revolve around gut health. Like if you fix the gut, you fix the brain, you fix the immune system, autoimmunity, everything. So that was a really profound book that impacted me, The Brain Drain, too.
And I love that. Well, and by the way, you've written a phenomenal book called Growing Younger, Restore Your Hormones, Energy, and Sex Drive. So
Thank you.
I would recommend everybody pick that up because as you can tell, Dr. Gowri is incredibly energized and passionate about the subject of health. And so just to finish, if you had one quote that kind of summarizes who you are as a human, what would that be?
If you can't help someone, don't hurt them.
I love that. Wow.
I think that to me is like a lot, and it says a lot. Like sometimes I don't say anything because I don't want to hurt someone, but words can, hurt. But even my actions, if I can't help someone, I won't do anything. I'd rather not hurt them.
Man.
But what I want my patients to feel is, I love that Jonathan Swift, may you live all the days of your lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like, I feel like we live, but not everyone's living. Like, like you got to be living. Like it's a gift. Every day is a gift. And we're so blessed. Like, I feel like, it just happened, what happened in Israel, for instance, like, yeah. Right. Like, it's so tragic. Like every day is a gift. Like anything could happen any day.
At any time.
Yes. And so we are so blessed that we have what we have, and every day matters, and people have to live that way. We cannot take things for granted,
Man, I think that's amazing. Well, Gowri, I really appreciate your time and your generosity and your healing energy. Thanks for being in my life.
Thank you, Reagan. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You're amazing. And what's the best way that people can reach out to you?
We have Optimum Wellness and Longevity. That's our practice name. I work with my husband, and we're just a moms and pops. So we love what we do, and we have a lot of loyal patients. And our website is Dr. Gowri Rocco or Dr. Gowri, either one. But I encourage people, they don't have to come see us. Get the book. I really wrote that book, Reagan, because I wanted people to just get the tools and the pearls, and to just practice it on your own, because not everyone has to take a hormone. Not everyone has to do everything. But if they're motivated, we're here to help. Just, like you are, like all of we're a community of healers, and we need to help each other and support each other so people have access to more. But a lot of this can be done on your own. Like I really tell people, I think about my parents, and my husband's grandma, she lived 102. Oh my God, she did not have a regenerative doctor. Okay. You know what she did? She walked, she cooked, she was doing her own cleaning. It's amazing, the things that she did. And, it's just great that she lived till the end, and she had her full memory. She was still cleaning her own house, cooking chicken noodle soup for us. And she's Italian, and making sauce and pasta. It's so there's a lot of things that we're able to do on our own, but absolutely. Yeah. I love working with my people. So if people want to come, we're thrilled.
Awesome. Love it. Well, thank you so much. And we'll have you on again, and can't wait to see you soon. I guess coach will be probably the next time I see you.
Yes,
See you in a
yes.
couple months.
Okay. Thank you, Reagan. It was such an honor to be here with you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And everybody, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with your family, friends, and loved ones. And we'll see you next time on Unreasonable Health.